welcome to the show. Vampires. I'm sure you've heard of them. There's been a lot of them over the centuries. Today, I am setting out to prove a certain thesis, one which is plastered on the back of my laptop on a certain sticker that my lovely, lovely roommate gave to me. I have so many fucking wires. That there is no such thing as a there is no such thing as a heterosexual vampire. So, how do I intend to prove this? There's a bunch of essays that have already proven this, quite well, in fact. But today I would like to expand on it myself in this PowerPoint presentation that I have been working on and off for 2 to 3 years now. So don't put that in your mouth, baby girl. Anyway, so I am going to be rating various vampire media by how gay it is, in no particular order. So, how this is going to work. This includes anything that I personally consider to be vampire media. What do I consider to be vampire media? I don't fucking know. So we're just gonna go off porn rules. AKA, I know it if I see it. Quote the noted vampirologist, Teresa Bain. I let the people who lived with their fears dictate to me what a vampire is. What does that mean in this context? Absolutely nothing. I just wanted to say, to quote noted vampirologist Teresa Bain. Okay, continuing. This is obviously all my opinion. I am going to be wrong about my opinion, even though it is objective, because I am stupid sometimes in my all-knowing knowledge. You will see that when we get to certain entries. Also going to include some of my general opinions on whether the media is good or not. Yes, you are being tricked into just sitting through a list of vampire media that I like, and also stuff I don't like and why I don't like it. Hi, Laszlo. Such an embarrassing name to say on camera in a vampire video, but Laszlo's here because she was lonely. This is not an exhaustive list. I have a spreadsheet with a bunch of vampire things on it, so trust me when I'm saying that this isn't even covering half of what's out there. I know that I'm going to get people who say, you didn't get this thing. I know, it's probably on the list. Consider these numbers that I'm about to throw out to be just as meaningful as the points on whose line is it anyway. I did try to show some variation with them, and I also tried to kind of control like how I judged things like for the time period. So I rated things written 1897 different than things from 1997, especially when I got to stuff from different countries that I personally might not be as well versed in because I'm not an anthropologist. I'm just a dumb little American. I read articles from people who were familiar with those cultures and tried to take their opinions into account, but don't take anything too seriously. Another thing to note, because I have been working on this for months and months and months, there are some times where the score might be a little bit weird with the description I gave for it, because I might have looked back on something and been like, I gave that a really low number. Why the hell did I do that? And like knocked it up a bunch, but like forgot to edit the rest of the slide. Or I edited the rest of the slide with, hi Laszlo. She's being really cute right now. I might have also rated something that's like relatively tame, that above something that like just oozes homosexuality. And don't worry about it too much. I did make a tier list at some point just to kind of make sure that there was some variation with the scores that made sense. but that was like last year. Also, this is mainly for comedic purposes. So, once again, do not take any of this too seriously. Please be nice to me. So, if the movie has a low score, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is hashtag straight. It just means that it doesn't feature flying gay vampire sex. If this was a list of everything that has ever been made ever, most of the scores would be sitting around like 9 or 10. But we're not doing that. We're doing just vampire stuff, so I'm holding them to higher standards. Please tell me if this gets boring. I have no way of knowing. That's what I would say if this was in front of a live audience. But I'm filming this in front of a camera. You are stuck with me. Anyway. Oh, I should put on the vampire things. Yeah, so these are the general criteria I used for deciding on the scores. Although most of the time it just came down to vibes. So yeah, let's get started. So shall we? I should take out the things. I can't. First up, got the one, the only Dracula. This is like one of like 15 copies I have of the book. This is my nice one that I don't really let people touch because it's got like fancy paper. But you can look at it. On one hand, I would not say that the homosexual vibes are like a huge thing in this. But on the other hand, this is unfortunately my backstory. I read Dracula when I was 14, 15, I think 15. Because I had my sexuality crisis when I was 16. Foreshadowing is a literary device. I reached chapter 3. Yeah, so I've got to the end of chapter 3. Keep in mind, I thought I was cis at the time, and so I didn't really go into a lot of things thinking like, oh, does this have hashtag homos in it? But I got to the end of chapter 3, and I was like, gay people real? Gay people real in 1897? Wild! Who knew? But yeah, I ended up Googling Dracula LGBT because I didn't quite trust my own judgment on that and figured that, you know, I'd look it up and find out, like, I'd see, like, 0 results, but I got a lot of results. So, yeah, I'd say chapter 3 really did a number 3 on me. And also Jonathan, I guess. That wasn't a great time for him. But anyway, overall, I'd give the book a 6 out of 10. You know, we could do better. Bram Stoker. I would recommend this book, especially if you think you are straight. Next, we have Nosferatu, the 1922 version. I have Orlok here. He's got his little rat buddy. And he comes with a little rat. We love the rat. Yeah, so, pretty straight. It is one of the few vampire movies where a man gets bitten by another man. It's not on screen, but I have to go over this now because it's going to be important for a lot of these. Fangs in neck is sex. Penetration, holes, fluid exchange. You sound fucking insane when you're saying it to people. Like, when I first read all of this, I was just like, every single person in this field is a pervert. Hi, Leslie. I'm talking about pervert vampires. Like, I was thinking, like, this is nuts. But now I am a fun little pervert, and I get to recruit others to the cause. A lot of filmmakers aren't really super willing to show men getting bitten by other men on screen because they're cowards. But even though if this film doesn't do it on screen, it still does it. They get a 3 out of 10 for that. It is a classic for a reason. I'm not a film student, but I imagine if you are, this is the sort of thing they would show you in film school. But like, if you don't want to watch it, you can just watch that one SpongeBob episode and you'll basically get the gist. Anyway, moving on. We got Nosferatu 2024. It feels wrong to say this is a gay vampire movie, but they do not shy away from the implications of that. Like, Nicholas Hoult, he was enthusiastic, I imagine, about doing this whole thing. I think he even said, like, in interviews, that he thought that Bill Skarsgård as Orlok was kind of hot.
I don't know the correct word, but he's given him such a history and reality to his past as a character that he's kind of hot. He's handsome in a way. Yeah. Everyone's gone very quiet, but so I was into it.
They also let him keep the prosthetic dick, and he has it in like a little frame that I probably can't show. He gets it. I wouldn't call this a gay vampire movie because it was more about fear of sexuality in general and not specifically queer sexuality. Again, this is a thing where I'm holding this movie to much higher standards because it came out in the year of our Lord 2024. And if they wanted to, they could have made a gay vampire movie, but they chose not to. But they also weren't cowards about it, which gives them a 7 out of 10. I am this film's target audience. I love this movie so much. Go look at the trigger warnings if you want to watch it and take care of yourself. But next we have Dracula, 1931. I don't have a lot to say about this. I initially left it out entirely, but I think that would get my vampire card revoked. I did leave out the Hammer Christopher Lee Dracula, though, so just... But I gave it a 2 out of 10. Solid movie. Would recommend. Bela Lugosi's a pretty neat dude. I will also take this as an opportunity to show off my favorite picture of Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi. I know how to say... I can say names. Cool guy, but he is dead, unfortunately. And buried in the Dracula cave. Did you know that? Anyway, moving on. We have Dracula, 1931. I'm gonna get the 2 out of 10 rating out of the way because this is just the same movie, but also it's not. It's the Spanish version. I am actually gonna give it a 3 out of 10 because Lucia and Ava have like slightly more homoeroticism in how the actresses portrayed them. And also I want to make they're gay in the Spanish dub jokes. The reason I want to talk about this is because the Spanish movie is really, really cool. Carlos Villarias is not quite as iconic as Bela Lugosi, which is like a hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby situation, unfortunately. Like, no hate to him, just somebody's gotta be the coughing baby. But, like, in terms of the actual filmmaking, everything else about the Spanish version is just so much better. And, like, to Carlos's credit, he does a really interesting take on Dracula, like, before he was Dracula, like, in the pop culture zeitgeist. Anyway, the poster also fucks. I just want to show off the poster. If you do want to watch it, it was nearly impossible for me to find online, but there is, like, a Universal monster movie, like, every single Universal Dracula movie ever on DVD, and it's in the special stuff at the back of, like, one of the discs. Are you sad? Do you want to go inside? Do you want to go inside? Do you want to stick around until we get to what we do in this? Oh, you just want to get pet. Okay, I'll just put my hand right there. Anyway, next we have Dracula's daughter. If Gloria Holden pulled me off the side of the street and told me to take my shirt off, I for one would do so with no hesitation. The idea of conflating vampirism and queerness is like both being things that should be cured is obviously a tad problematic. But it does retroactively make Countess Zelenska's attempts to control her bloodlust really funny. Like her whole thing is just like, okay, I'm gonna like find a woman on the street and I'm going to like grab her off the street, not kidnapping, but also not kidnapping. And I am going to tell her to strip as I draw her portrait, and I am going to remain calm the entire time it takes me to complete this portrait of this woman. Do you want to guess how long she lasts? She lasts like a minute. She doesn't even get any of her drawing supplies out. Like the moment she sees a collarbone, she's just like, great job, queen. So I gave this a 9 out of 10. I genuinely cannot tell if this movie is funny on purpose or if it is completely on accident, but they do make the fascinating choice of starting with Van Helsing getting arrested for the murder of Dracula, which, that's a good bit. Also, I do think that Countess Zelenska is way cooler than her dad, alongside most of Dracula's children in various media. Yeah. What We Do in the Shadows, the 2014 movie. I mean, kinda, if you squint at it. I honestly think it's just because there's only one named female character and she's not a love interest. Shout out Jackie, you deserved better. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, you're gay because you like men. I'm gay because I hate women. But I also wouldn't say that this is a straight movie. It's somewhere in between. Like, not in a bisexual way, just in a confusing way. I'm not including Jackie's line about the homoerotic dick biting club, although that was a line in this movie. It lacked a lot of the vibes. Although I am aware that there is a community on Tumblr who ship Viago and Anton the werewolf, because they were both in Our Flag Means Death, which, sure. So, similarly to Interview with the Vampire, it suffers from having a TV adaptation that it can be directly compared to. So, we're gonna end on a 4 out of 10. To quote Laszlo Carey-Vinsworth, King of Bottoms, gay is in, gay is hot, I want some gay, gay it's gonna be. So, I'd say season 1 and 2 are like a 6 out of 10, but season 3 onward, at least like season 3 and 4-ish. Well, season 5 and 6. Oh, season 5 and 6. Anyway, I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. As for whether I would recommend it, I'm sure you could gather from the fact that there was just currently a little creature scampering around in here who I was referring to as Laszlo. I have very normal feelings about this show that I am already drafting a script on. That score has held strong, despite it all. Oh, look at me! I'm teenager high school red. Look at me! I never got into one of the shows that like did a queer bait on me. I've made it through my teenage years without ever getting invested in a show that would like bait its audience for like marketing purposes. That's my impression of an idiot. Hello, nice to meet you. I am an idiot. All right, we gotta move on here. Burning the Vampire. This is yet another kinda Like, I think the sailor characters are definitely fucking each other, but that's less a being in a vampire novel thing and more so a being in the Navy thing. Admittedly, I am not even close to finishing this. I don't know, maybe Vernie has some fuck nasty butt sex on like page 879 of 1340, but I don't know because I didn't get there. So based on what I have read so far, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. This is way too long for me to reasonably recommend to people, but it is honestly a delight to read. I think that he was paid by the line, so that creates some interesting results. Next we have Carmilla. This is the lesbian vampire story. This is what people point to when they want to talk about gay vampires. Also, how to handle my gayification. Like, when I was descending into the rabbit hole, like, before I knew that I was queer myself, I was just reading about how Dracula was definitely gay, and people are bringing this up as like, oh, the gay vampires. But yeah, like I would just like go around and I would show the like passages to like my family members because this was during lockdown, so they were the only people I was talking to, and I'd be like, oh my god, the vampires, they're gay. Did you know that the vampires were gay? This was published in 1872 and the vampires are gay. They're kissing. And I did not understand why everyone else in my life didn't think that that was like the coolest thing ever. I had a boyfriend at the time, by the way. Anyway, I give this a 10 out of 10. I'm going to read directly from the slide what I wrote here at some point in my life. I would rank it lower, because compared to the others, it's pretty light, but I think I would get my gay card revoked for that. I don't know what the fuck I was talking about there. Cause no, it is not. It's not relatively light compared to the others. It is about as explicit as you can get. I don't even know, man. Anyway, would recommend. It's definitely a product of its time. There's like some bits in the beginning where you're like, whoa, racism, whoopsie. That's my impression of getting hit with. Anyway, next we have Manor. The fact that like I sometimes remember this story and like its plot, and oh, it's a fun one. It's a real fun one. It's literally just like a tragic love story where the main characters just like happen to be queer, and nowadays you could call that like a bury your gays, but for 1884, also they technically unburied that gay. That's the plot of what happened there. But anyway, the main real reason why this is significant is because it was written by Karl Heinrich Ullers. I butchered the fuck out of that. Karl Heinrich Ulrichs. I probably also am pronouncing that wrong. I highly recommend looking him up. He's a very neat dude. I think Matt Baum has a video briefly going up. I don't know, I just remember seeing like a video about like gay vampires and he's in the thumbnail. I give this a 10 out of 10. Very short, absolutely devastating. Next we have The Vampire by John William Polidori. Lord Riven is the OG queer vampire. This story isn't super queer by itself, but then you get to the drama surrounding it, and it's like, oh. Lord Byron, messiest bitch who ever lived. I long for the day that I can bring Lord Byron back from the dead and just like set him loose on a liberal arts college campus and see what he does to the cultural zeitgeist. Anyway, I gave the story a 6 out of 10. I honestly find the history surrounding it a lot more interesting than the story itself. SparkNotes version, if you are a fan of Frankenstein, this spawned from the same little writing contest thing that birthed Frankenstein, which also has a Byronic protagonist slash character. All of Gothic horror is just Lord Byron in a different silly hat. Moving on. Last words of Garden All. I do feel the need to preemptively disclose the fact that the first time I played Dungeons and Dragons, I did base one of my characters off of Ludovico. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. That would be embarrassing if I was saying it wrong after playing with him for over a year. Anyway, I based my first D&D character off of this story, and said character is certainly a guy. I am sorry to inform anyone who has played Dungeons and Dragons with me that if you read the actual story, there's no textual evidence necessarily for him being one of them queers, but there is textual evidence for him being a dumbass. The F slur does appear in this short story, but in its original context of like a bundle of sticks. It is still wild to read though. I give this a 5 out of 10 overall. Probably weighted a bit, but this is possibly one of my favorite vampire short stories ever, just because without spoiling anything, because I really want people to read this. I'm linking it in the description. It's in the public domain. It's not necessarily the most well-written vampire short story, but like I went in kind of already familiar with the genre, and I thought that I knew basically how things were gonna play out. Boy, was I wrong. Anyway, next we have A Mystery of the Campagna. Everything on this list is just me getting into it and being like, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Sorry, the Italians. So, anyway, funny thing about me when I'm reading a short story for the first time, like particularly short stories because they're the most fun to do this with, is that when I read a new like short story for the first time that is related to vampires, I like to play this game where I see how fast it takes for the said short story to get. There are some strong contenders for the title, as you might imagine, but currently Mystery of the Campagna holds the record for being able to hold out for a single paragraph. Great job. Hey fellas, is it gay to let your close bro like call you pet names and dress you, and then when you don't get to see him for like a week, go into a raving delirium where you call out his name and just like go into feverish delirium? God, Anne Crawford had such a stroke of genius writing this, because the first part of the story is told from Martin's perspective. Martin is our little raving queer, but as soon as he goes into his little delirious state, he hands off the story to like one of his good close friends who is like kind of around at the time and who like basically acted as a messenger between him and Marcello. And oh boy, Robert went through so much. It's comedy gold, in my opinion. Anyway, I give this an 8 out of 10 overall. I need to drink some water before we get into Castlevania, because we're going to be here for a while. So, Castlevania, specifically Netflixvania. Overall, I would say, very horny show. There are some queer characters. I think it's the generals, like Carmilla's comrades. Carmilla herself, unfortunately, there's no textual evidence to support her necessarily being a lesbian herself, besides not being a fan of men. but her comrades are gay and in love with each other. That's about it. Besides, I think they could have done better, but Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard are in a throuple, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Overall, 7 out of 10. Gamers seem to hate this because it messed up a lot of the lore and added some non-white people. But I watched it before I got into any of the games, and I thought it was good. I liked it. R.I.P. Grant Dynasty. Netflix it couldn't handle a bad bitch. Imagine passing up a man named Grant Dynasty. I would say season 1 and 2 are good. Kinda gets a bit muddled by season 3, and then season 4 completely lost me. But the animation stays pretty consistently good. Moving on, Castlevania Nocturne. Not quite as horny as the original, but it does have a lot of really pretty people. Olrox and Drota can do whatever they want to me. I did write this before watching season 2, and the queerness was a lot more explicit in season 1. Season 2, I wouldn't say it got more or less explicit, but it certainly didn't disappoint me. I do have some opinions on how queerness is represented, especially when it comes to Elizabeth Bathory. But it's also not anything that the original series didn't also have issues with. I give this an 8 out of 10. I do have many criticisms, but I do prefer this over the first series. Once again, if you are here for accurate game lore, you are going to be sorely disappointed. But once again, if you treat it as its own separate thing, you'll probably have a good time with it, as I did. Moving on to the games, we have Symphony of the Night. One of the most iconic moments in gaming history is Dracula, like, throwing his wine glass and being like, "What is a man?" Queen behavior. If any of you need ideas on what to get me for my birthday, I would highly recommend a pair of booty shorts with a miserable little pile of secrets on the ass. They really took the time to animate Alucard's hair on his sprite, so you know that Diva uses conditioner. And also, in terms of, you know, being a fashionable gay, you can customize his cloak color. It took me personally about like 5 hours to find a cloak that I didn't think looked like absolute shit, but you can customize the cloak. Anyway, 6 out of 10. If you have the means to play this, whether that is legally or yo-ho-ho, you 100% should. It's great. Ayami Kojima, I owe you my life. Anyway, next we have Harmony of Dissonance. Boy, it felt like every single interaction between Just and Maxim was just, like, scientifically formulated to appeal to, like, little gay people on Tumblr, of which I am one. I'm so unwell about them. Like, I think about the plot of this game, like once a day, once a week, depends on how things are going. I'm not gonna detail the whole plot because I like, go play the game, please. I will say though, in order to get like the best ending of the game, you have to go into the final battle wearing Juice's bracelet and also Maxim's bracelet that he gave you. Like, they're matching bracelets, and you have to wear them both going into the final battle against Maxim, so that he'll kind of like snap out of his little Dracula possession. And hey fellas, also it is important to say that Liddy was pretty underdeveloped because unfortunately she is a woman in a video game in 2002, but let it be known, she is 100% part of this weird little throuple that is going on. Because Castlevania sure does love its thruples. Also, it's important for me to talk about how Just is canonically just a bitchy furniture gay. I think that was one of the most delightful side quests I've ever done in a video game that wasn't, like, required for anything. And I don't think there's even, like, a reward for doing it. It's just, like, you go into a room and he's just like, God, this is disgusting. I need to fix this. I need to fix this right now. And then, like, it becomes a side quest throughout the game where you find furniture to put into the room. It's not in your house, by the way. This isn't Dracula's house. You're just decorating one of those rooms because you think it looks like shit. Anyway, 10 out of 10. I would not say that this is the best Castlevania gameplay-wise, but I do think people are mean, especially when it comes to the soundtrack. If you didn't enjoy the soundtrack, fine. But, like, if you say that it's bad, regardless of the game quality, I do think this is my favorite Belmont. That boy can fit so much generational trauma. Anyway, next we have Aria of Sorrow. Special shout out to my favorite soy boy, femboy, anime boy, I almost said Soima Cruz. So Soima Cruz. Soma, despite the vibes, doesn't feel quite as gay as the other protagonists, especially because Mina is there. He does, however, get his own little wine glass moment. So actually this is peak queer rep. 6 out of 10 for peak queer rep. This is the other game besides Symphony of the Night that people will tell you is the greatest of all time, and I had a good time with it. I personally wasn't as invested in the plot, but, like, it's a fun time. You will have a fun time with this one. I feel the need to mention that this game takes place in 2035, because that means that, based on the age that Soma is in the game, he was born in 2017. Soma is as old as the Nintendo Switch. Soma is out there right now, and he is watching Skibbity Toilet, and if I have to live with that knowledge, so do you. Anyway, next we have Lament of Innocence. This franchise is just, it's not beating the allegations. Spoilers for the ending, but Matthias' whole like, hey, my wife died of unspecified disease. Your wife died of me killing her. And God failed to prevent both of our wives dying. So consider you and I become vampires together, and then we spite God for all eternity. Also, like, spoilers, Matthias becomes Dracula, and then Leon is just like, I am dedicating my entire bloodline to exterminating you from existence. Hey fellas. I gave this a 7 out of 10. People seem to really like this game or really hate it because 3D Castlevania is always an experiment, but I had a good time with it, so I would recommend. Next, Castlevania Curse of Darkness. Isaac. I put a little picture of him down here. It'll probably be easier to put him up on screen because I'm not sure how well he's appearing on screen. But need I say more? I will say more. Konami really released 2 3D Castlevania games in a row where you have to fight your former homoerotic bestie after he is responsible for the death of your wife slash fiance slash girlfriend. They just did that. Good for them. Initially, I was going to give Isaac an honorable mention just for, you know, look at him. But, Hector, I'm sorry, I'm just saying that if you're gonna pull a little, like, I'm the only one allowed to kill you, no, like, You and I have to be the one who kills you. No one else can kill you but me. Hey fellas. Also, spoiler alert, there is a scene where Isaac stabs Trevor Belmont, by the way, Trevor Belmont. And I know what gay sex is when I see it. You can't fool me, no Konami.
Enough talk. Time to die.
Anyway, 9 out of 10. As much as I love Curse of Darkness, Isaac, you cannot reasonably tell me that he is better written than his Netflix counterpart. I have seen real people in the wild trying to say that this is better written than the Netflix counterpart. No. Anyway, as for the gameplay, I am really glad that I played Lament of Innocence first, so that I could tell where they fixed the jank from that game, but like, if you absolutely have to pick between this and Lament of Innocence, like, your computer only has enough storage to definitely legally download one game, I would go with this one. Anyway, we're finally out of the Castlevania dimension. Anyway, the main vampire in this is a child, so not really. I don't want to end up on Fox News, so we're just gonna say not really. But without spoiling anything, there is a scene where somebody gets turned into a vampire. Abigail is not involved, and yeah. But it's not, like, more or less homoerotic than any other vampire turning you would get. It's, like, pretty middle of the pack. So 4 out of 10. I will spoil one thing, though, which is that when Catherine Newton's character gets turned into a vampire, next we have Interview with the Vampire. Yippee! Interview with the Vampire. I don't know enough about all of the books to rank them all. I haven't read all of them. But this one does get bonus points for surprising me. I think I already knew I was gay at this point when I went to read it. So I went to Barnes & Noble, and I wanted to get a vampire book, so I got this one. And I've heard of Vampire Chronicles before, but I knew nothing about it. So I was just like, okay, so this is gonna be, like, basically Twilight. Of, like, that sort of thing. Twilight, True Blood, which is a very funny assumption in hindsight. But, like, Twilight, Vampire Diaries, I thought it was going to be like that. So I was a bit embarrassed going to get it. But I put it up, like I handed it to the bookshelf, the clerk, and first indication that perhaps I had maybe misjudged a bit, was they were like, oh, Vampire Chronicles, that's a really good book. Then, like, okay, I can pinpoint exactly where I had the realization, because this was when I took notes. So, page 17. Okay, maybe I'm reading into this, but he likes Lestat a lot. Like, way too much. Especially since dying via vampire and sex seem interchangeable. And then in brackets, just Googled it, this is intentional. Hello, nice to meet you. I am an idiot. Anyway, Louis, just throughout the whole thing, is like, yeah, this thing was started. It was, like, almost like we were lovers. You know, this thing, it was almost like we were having sex. Fellas, just say you fucked. The rest of the time, Louis is just like, Lestat is a dumb bitch. Lestat is a dumb bitch and I hate him so much. And that's kind of just how my friends talk about their exes. So, 9 out of 10. I do think it's good. There are some icky parts. racism, I'm talking about the racism. I would highly recommend the book, especially the audiobook as read by Frank Miller. He really, really nails the homoeroticism. Next, we have the movie from 1994. Literally the source of this meme. And I would agree. This movie walked so others could just sprint. I would not say it's as gay as the book, but also it is gay enough that, like, I was talking to one of my friends from high school who watched this, and they were like, are they? And I got to be like, oh boy. Anyway, I give this a 9 out of 10. Same score as the last one, but that's mainly just because I can't put it any higher than what's about to come. But also, 8 out of 10 didn't feel quite right. I would say it is similar to the book, that when it's good, it's like really good, but when it's bad, it's like, please stop. I know what the point of Claudia's character is, that like she's aging and she's like maturing as a woman, but trapped in a child's body. And in that book, it's a lot easier to get that messaging. But when you're watching a movie with an 11-year-old actress playing across however old Brad Pitt was at the time, it's like, it's a bit more visceral, I would say, and I'm personally not a fan of that. Next, Queen of the Damned. Considering the rest of the Vampire Chronicles stuff, like especially on this list, pretty straight. Also, Lestat, way too normal in this. He is not nearly as deranged and bisexual as he should be, but I do get the sense that Marius in this movie, do not get confused with him as Marius from the books. There are different Mariuses, but I get the sense that Marius really wanted to fuck that one vampire researcher who was specifically studying him, which, honestly, I would watch a whole movie about that. The most I can say about this is that it's bisexual in the sense that everyone is equally very attractive. So 6 out of 10. I barely knew what was going on at any given time, and the more that I learned about the actual lore that this movie was drawing off of, the harder it became to watch. But the soundtrack, big fan of the soundtrack. More vampire movies should have metal soundtracks. Jonathan Davis, I owe you my life. I'm so sorry if you've ever had to drive with me and listen to Forsaken on repeat, but anyway, next we have Interview with the Vampire, the TV series. Oh god, I watched the movie recently with some people, and they're like, it can't get any more homoerotic than this, right? Like, this is, I think one of them even said, like, I don't know how this could get any gayer. And I was just like, you fool, you sweet summer child. I know that this can get gayer. Flying gay vampire sex. That's it. That's my argument. I give this a flying gay vampire sex out of 10. As for whether I would recommend it, yeah. If you're going to pick between, like, the book, the movie, or the series, like, you haven't gotten into any of them, and you're trying to know what to start with, I would start with the series, because it's really good. It's beginner-friendly, and it fixes a lot of the stuff, like the issues that I had with the book and the movie, in a way that I thought was really well handled, and also, like, thought about the implications of the changes they were making and how that would impact characters and their plot lines. But I would also say, like, the book and the movie still have their place and are still worth experiencing. Next we have The Vampire Lestat. This is the only book from the rest of the series that I'm going to add to the list, just because I don't want to get into all of the books. but also I don't think talking about just Interview with the Vampire adequately describes how gay these books are. Interview with the Vampire 1976 has like some plausible deniability. If you're really reaching, you could be like, yes, this is super platonic. Fangs in the neck. But Lestat literally comes out and says, like, as plainly as he can, yes, Louis and I, we were lovers, we were in a romantic relationship with each other. He was very mean to me in his book, but I am writing my book now to let him know how much I love him and how, Louis, please take me back. Please take me back, Louis. Louis, please come back. I'm not even exaggerated. I'm not gonna read the paragraphs. I will probably put it a bit more like up on screen. Anyway, 10 out of 10. I would still say this is not as gay as the TV series, but at this point that's a bit of an unfair comparison. Like, this book is about as gay as you can get without having flying gay vampire sex. I do adore this book, and personally, I think you should read it if you want. You should look up trigger warnings for it, but, yeah. Alright. Next, Vampire Hunter D. Yeah, not really. I'm sorry. Yeah, once again, vampires are absolutely associated with sexuality here. Just not really queer sexuality. If you really want to reach, you could hypothetically ask about the implications of D having a sentient left hand. But I'm not going to ask about those implications. 1 out of 10 in terms of gayness. But this was a very fun watch, if only because it's inspired a lot of other vampire media, especially in terms of anime and manga. It felt like every 5 minutes I was watching something and I was just like, wait a minute. I've seen this before. Anyway, we're mixing things up with a song. I don't think I can play it for copyright reasons. So you're just gonna have to go and listen to it. Exactly what it says on the tin. Lesbian vampires. From where? From outer space. Also, the music video for this is campy as fuck. I love it so much. It fills me with such joy. So I give this a 10 out of 10. Absolute banger of a song. Go listen to Scary Bitches right now. Next we have Lost Boys. Here's the thing. I don't think it's super obvious when I'm rewatching it, or even on my first watch through, that this is like a gay vampire movie. But I have read articles written by like actual queer theorists with degrees, especially like Gen X queer theorists who like grew up watching the movie and who resonated with it. I am taking their word for it that this is a gay vampire movie. I definitely don't watch it and think that it's straight, but I just don't really see it. My theory is that I'm in too deep and that I've watched too many of these dumbass movies, and so a lot of tropes just seem like normal to me, and I don't know what straight people do. All straight people dress like this. Straight people, this is gang, heteros, the heteroist gang. If Joel Schumacher just like put nipples on their costumes, maybe I would have been a little bit quicker about picking up on it. Anyway, 8 out of 10. We're putting a little question mark there, but this is one of the few movies on this list I would say is like actually a good movie and not just something I like because it's stupid. So yeah, go watch it. Also, shout out to the goths in the opening sequence. I love them so much. Also, I can't believe I didn't mention Oiled Up Sax Band. I I think that's like 90% of the reason why people call this movie gay. So actually, I don't know what I'm talking about, and you should never listen to me ever. Moving on. I did, as I previously stated, skip over the original Christopher Lee Dracula, but I am covering its sequel, Brides of Dracula, because this movie is queer-coded as hell. It's not something that I feel like I can explain like right now, but it's the sort of thing where you can read an article about it, and then you watch the movie, and like you can't not see it. But also, like, there are some moments hidden in there where you're like, the Hays Code was around, right?
Marianne, my darling Marianne, you haven't forgotten your little Gina. Put your arms around me, please. I want to kiss you, Marianne.
So I give this a 6 out of 10. This is honestly one of my favorite vampire movies, like, ever. I can't explain why. I love it. It's fun. I love it so much. It's fun. Anyway, Van Helsing. This movie, pure camp. Like, if we're talking about the vibes, way up here. Dracula impaling himself on Victor's sword and being like, you can't kill me, Victor. I'm already dead. That's something. That was a choice. I also think it's worth mentioning that whenever I see Hugh Jackman in anything, I think about how in 2017, when I was in middle school, like some people were talking about The Greatest Showman, and how they wanted to see it because Zac Efron was cute. And I said that I wanted to see it because Hugh Jackman was in it. Because thing about me that is really difficult for me to confess is that I was a theater kid. I know it's hard to tell based on, you know, how I carry myself, but I was a former theater kid, and I liked Hugh Jackman because he was in Les Mis. And like this one girl like turned to me and she's just like, oh, is Hugh Jackman your celebrity crush? And I was extremely confused and a little bit grossed out at the question because Hugh Jackman is older than my dad, and I didn't understand why anyone would think that I, a 13-year-old, would have a crush on Hugh Jackman. It took me 3 years after that to realize that I may not entirely be straight. If you have a crush on Hugh Jackman, I, for one, support your journey. Anyway, 7 out of 10. This movie's really stupid, but I will watch it with you for free. Next. Dracula, Dead and Loving It. It's a Mel Brooks movie. I don't know if you've ever seen a Mel Brooks movie, but a good chunk of the comedy is women having tits and men being too British to handle that. The Renfield Dracula dynamic is always going to be a little bit gay because of the whole master thing, but that's about as much as it gets. I will give props to this movie for what is perhaps the only accurate film portrayal of Van Helsing ever. Not enough people get across the fact that he's just a weird little man who is constantly kerfuddling everyone else. Although I guess Willem Dafoe did a pretty good job in Nosferatu. Although technically that wasn't Van Helsing, that was a different guy. Copyright safe Van Helsing. So I am giving this a 1 out of 10 in terms of homosexuality. I've seen this get some poor reviews, especially compared to other Mel Brooks movies, but as somebody who's seen way too many Dracula adaptations, this delighted me. Moving on. The Hunger. There is heterosexual sex in the beginning. There's actually 2 heterosexual sex. like 4 people having heterosexual sex separately of each other. There's 2 heterosexual sex scenes going on at the same time in different locations, but it's also interspersed with Peter Murphy dancing around in a cage, and I think that cancels it out. Also, David Bowie's in this movie. He's right there. Also, Susan Sarandon. She's right there. I wouldn't say this movie is gay. It is bisexual with a capital B. This is one of the few vampire movies that is sapphic without being a Carmilla adaptation. This also taught me that more gay sex scenes should have blood, like, involved in them. Not just, like, in people's bodies, but, like... Anyway, 10 out of 10. This is often described as style without substance, but I, for one, really enjoyed it. It's also goth as fuck. I don't know if you can tell, but I, for one, enjoy goth things. Next. Vamp. Grace Jones. Katrina, the character seen here, she's basically just a drag queen, and she also gets to murder a twink. You know, as all drag queens dream of doing, I'm assuming. I would say that this is the sort of movie where it's queer because of the general vibes and not necessarily because of the characters. Like, it manages to be a very queer movie without ever... It's hard to describe unless you've watched it. Anyway, I'd give this a 7 out of 10. This is super underrated, but fair warning, it does take place entirely in a strip club, and if, hypothetically, your 12-year-old brother walks in on you watching it, maybe a bit difficult to explain. I've been working on this so long that 12-year-old brother is turning 15 soon. Anyway, next. One spittin'. Fuck.
Okay, Sebastian. Out of the closet.
I came out of the closet centuries ago.
So on one hand, I would not say that the gay jokes in this movie aged very well. But on the other hand, there's an extended sequence where they're trying to figure out if Jim Carrey has, like, a bite, like, there-ish. And so his friends decide to, like, let's say confront him in the locker room. You could have just asked. He even says, hey guys, you could have just asked me. Great job, guys. Great work there. The Countess did really serve a lot of cunt, which works in this movie's favor. Jim Carrey and his girlfriend should have joined the vampire polycule, but they did not, unfortunately. So we are ending at a 5 out of 10. Like I said, there's parts of this movie that did not age well, but the rest of the movie, I would say, is enjoyable. That's just, like, the one thing I would say is to be aware of that. Next. My best friend is a vampire. This one's just a thinly veiled coming out allegory. It's barely subtext. They just keep casting Robert Sean Leonard as deeply closeted man who is secretly in love with his best friend. I love Darla and Jeremy's relationship in this movie, mainly because I can project onto it. A little bit too relatable to my high school experience. They both just spend their entire first date talking about their best friends, who they both definitely aren't secretly in love with.
Ralph is, can be a jerk sometimes, but he's my best friend, and, what can I say?
Yeah, it's okay, I understand. Gloria doesn't exactly think you're hot stuff either.
Great work, guys. Great work here. The thing I love about this movie is that it's not just Jeremy being, like, definitely in the closet, but his heterosexual love interest, Darla, is also the most lesbian I've ever seen in my fucking life. I love her so much. I went, 100 out of 10. That's actually a typo. I, like, added an extra 0 when I was just typing that 10. But then I looked at it and I was just like, you know what? Yeah, this movie's so deranged. I love it. I love it so much. I have seen that people say that this movie and Once Bitten just have the same plot. They don't. But if you are going to pick one teen 80s vampire comedy, I would say that this one does it better. Next we have Hellsing. I'm talking about the manga because I haven't watched the anime yet. I initially gave this a 0 out of 10 when I first read the series Vampire Lore, because basically how vampires work in this universe is in order to turn somebody into a vampire, you have to bite a member of the opposite sex who is also a virgin. Otherwise, they just become a ghoul. And it's just like... So gay people don't exist in this universe. Noted. However, as things progress, little bit... I would not say that this is so much gay as it is transgender. Alucard and the Queen of England did get to be lesbians in the 40s, which I think is very cool of them. There's also an intersex character who, in my opinion, is actually pretty well written for a character in the late 90s. Anyway, I give this an 8 out of 10. I haven't watched the anime yet, as I have said, but I would recommend the manga. But I can't not mention the abridged series.
Give that bitch a cannon. Bitches love cannon.
Next we have Blade. So fun fact about me is that I have a tendency to go into, like, vampire movies. And I'm like, okay, based on, like, the genre and, like, the vibes I'm getting off of this is probably gonna be one of the straight ones. I never learn my fucking lesson, because I'm always wrong. Every single time. Deacon Frost, the villain of this movie, he's just such a slutty man. And I need to become him, mind, body, and soul. Every single time while I was watching this movie, and it was just like, okay, this can't get any hornier. I was proven wrong. So, moral of the story, never trust my judgment. I'd give this a 7 out of 10. I don't usually enjoy action movies. Like, it's just not a genre that I'm into. But I liked this a lot. So I would recommend, especially if you like men. Anyway, moving on. Blade 2, 2002. I would not say that this is as gay as the original Blade movie. Mostly because Deacon Frost is not in it, and there's not quite as much queerness as a metaphor for vampirism subtext. But, you know, it has its moments. Especially when a character named Chupa gets sucked to death. There was also a lot of moments from Chupa with him and Whistler where it's just like, is he gonna fuck that old man? Don't worry though, after he dies, there are plenty of other characters who are lining up to fuck that old man. So I'd give this a 5 out of 10. Pretty solid movie. Next, Blade Trinity.
Welcome to the Honeycomb Hideout. How do you bankroll this operation?
I date a lot of older men.
So most of the vibes from this movie are just like Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds. He really does have like a supernatural ability to just turn every straight man gay, which, good for him. So I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. I would say this is definitely the goofiest movie in the trilogy, so that can either be a positive or a negative, depending on like how you enjoy movies. However, if I'm being honest, I could not tell you a single thing about this movie's plot, mainly because I watched it when I was severely sleep deprived. However, I could give you a detailed description of every single scene that Natasha Lyonne is in. Alright, next we've got Renfield. every time I watch this movie with, like, other people, they're just like, are they? And it's not like I can say no. This movie has, like, just the right amount of homoeroticism, in my opinion, because I don't think Renfield should have sex with Dracula. I don't think that would be good for him, but I do get the sense from him that he really just wants to be Dracula's stay-at-home husband in, like, a frilly pink robe that says "Kiss the Chef" on it. That's his dream in life, at least until the end of the movie. Dracula is undeniably a bad person, but he just eats it up in every scene he's in. Nicolas Cage, I owe you my life. I would probably have a better time with this movie if there weren't so many fucking cops in it. We're gonna, like, get Renfield out of an abusive relationship with Dracula and put him into a relationship with a cop with anger issues. That's so much better. Obviously. Anyway, overall, 7 out of 10. This movie is awful in the exact way that I wanted it to be awful as soon as I saw the trailers. Like, if I were going to make a movie, this is the movie I would make. And it fills me with so much joy that this movie exists. I am, however, going to die mad that they cut the dance sequence. I understand that the movie probably flowed better without it, but I'm so mad about the dance sequence. Why did they have to cut the dance sequence? Also, MCR is in the soundtrack. I should probably add a point for that, but I don't feel like it. Anyway, Fright Night. Oh, you'd think from that reaction that I'm a fucking nerd. God forbid you think I'm a nerd. Oh no. Similarly to The Lost Boys, when I first watched this movie, I got, like, straight vibes from it. It's not. I'm dumber for believing this one, though. Every single time I rewatch it, I'm like, how? I don't know what was going through my head. Anyway, besides from, like, the general everything about the movie, that was a door opening and closing. Anyway, yeah, so most of the actors, as far as I can tell, are queer themselves. Well, I don't know about Chris Sarandon and William Ragsdale, but, like, Amanda Bierce, Stephen Jeffries, Roddy McDowell is the most, like, unconfirmed one in there just because he's deceased. But overall, I would give this movie 8 out of 10. Highly recommend. I like this movie. It's got really good effects. Anyway, Fright Night Part 2. When I was first putting this list together, I was going to skip over this one because, well, first of all, I haven't watched it yet. But, like, I was watching the movie and I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna put it on the list. But then, I saw a, like, canonically trans vampire on roller skates bowling. And I can't not talk about her. In the first movie, Charlie isn't exactly the best protagonist, especially in the first scene when he's not exactly the most likable dude in the world. But this movie just really hits me over the head with, oh, he's just like me. He's just like me.
God, it makes me mad when people do that. I mean, you included, Alex. There happens to be some great literature from the field. Did you ever read Dracula? Oh, no. It's a great book, Alex. A great book.
Alex gets Girlfriend of the Year for actually reading the book that her boyfriend was very passionately info-dumping to her about. Also, Peter Vincent in this movie continues to be possibly my favorite, like, vampire hunter in media of all time. There's just a lot of gender fuckery overall, like, not just because of trans vampire bowling. They put Charlie kind of into the traditional Mina Harker role of where he's getting slowly turned into a vampire, and I think that's pretty neat. Anyway, 9 out of 10. I would not say that the plot in this one is as coherent, probably because there's a bit more going on besides just like, oh, my next door neighbor's a vampire. I don't think I could recount the plot. But the original plot doesn't have any vampires and roller skates. So obviously, this is the better one. One out of 10. I'm giving that 1 point to David Tennant. David Tennant, I owe you my life. Basically, the only part of Peter Vincent's character that they seem to remain faithful to is bisexual. And, like, I guess that's neat, but I initially gave this movie a higher score for Peter Vincent, but I don't like it very much, so I knocked it down to a 1. This isn't necessarily a bad movie, so if you have watched it and you enjoyed it, that's perfectly fine. I do, however, think it is a bad remake, and I made the mistake of watching it directly after I rewatched the first movie, and I got to feel joy and optimism about that first movie and think about everything about it that I loved. And then I watched this one and got to watch all of that get torn apart in front of my very eyes. You'd think a movie that was made almost 30 years later would be less misogynistic than the original. You would be wrong. So this is yet another, oh yeah, you're gay because you like men. I'm gay because I hate women. Moving up a bit. Just ignore the 2 in the title of Fright Night 2 New Blood. This is not a sequel, this is another remake. Although, honestly, I would say it's more of a reimagining. Consider it to be fanfiction. This time, they said, what if Jerry Dandridge was a lesbian? She's not technically a lesbian, she is bisexual, but if I were to say, what if Jerry Dandridge was bisexual? You would be sitting there in your infinite wisdom saying, oh, but isn't Jerry already bisexual? Correct. Anyway, 7 out of 10. There's a ton of changes, and I don't necessarily like all of them, but they didn't make me as viscerally angry as the 2011 movie because of that alternate AU fanfiction vibe. One of the changes I liked the most was that they made Peter Vincent into, like, a ghost hunting YouTuber, which I think was a much better understanding of his character for a modern setting than the 2011 version, just keeping him as a TV personality. Anyway, next we have Anyab. This is the Egyptian remake of Rocky Horror, except Frankenfurter is Dracula. I did give this an 8 out of 10 because I'm directly comparing it to Rocky Horror Picture Show, but this is very much considered, like, in Egyptian cinema to be a queer film. If you're gonna watch one or the other, I would go with the original Rocky Horror, but the original doesn't have the Pink Panther theme, just out of nowhere. They also play the Jaws theme when Dracula is hunting down this movie's version of Brad and Janet, and just overall, there's an unhinged vibe that the original, like, dreams it could come up with. Like, if you thought that the plot of Rocky Horror Picture Show was a bit all over the place, you haven't seen shit. Also, Brad's got some really great cheekbones. I just feel the need to mention that. Anyway, next, Twilight Saga. I almost forgot to include this when I was originally making this list, which is horrifying. I'm gonna cover all the movies in one go because I'm trying to be concise. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, I would say Edward and Bella are T for T, Bi for Bi, Autism for Autism. I'm correct. Overall, I give this a 3 out of 10. 1 point because I think Bella is just like me for real. Testosterone would have fixed them. 1 point because Kristen Stewart and Ashley Greene. And 1 point because Jacob should have been attracted to Edward's ballsack for the same reason he was attracted to Bella's unborn eggs. filming. I don't know, man. Yeah, so Michael Sheen was also pretty great in this movie. To be clear, I am not a Twilight hater. In fact, I have a bone to pick with anyone who hates Twilight because, like, they made vampires sexy, or because, like, oh, they sparkle now, that's dumb and gay. Yeah, because, like, burning up immediately in the sunlight instead of looking a little, like, for a few seconds, yeah, that's real cool. To immediately die as soon as you go touch grass. Also, like, we covered The Lost Boys. The vampires in The Lost Boys bleed glitter. Did we all just forget? I didn't cover it when we were talking about that movie, but they bleed glitter, by the way. If you cut them enough to bleed, it is glitter. Twilight is garbage. It's just not for the straight man reasons. It's mostly because, once again, racism and also bad writing. One of those is slightly more important, I would say. Speaking of cool heterosexual boy vampires, I don't even know, man. There's a whole scene in this movie where they're like, our vampires aren't gay. Our vampires aren't gay. They're gonna fucking get you. Anyway, when I was kicking your ass earlier, did you get a hard on from that? Did that make your dick hard when I was kicking your ass? Also, not working in this movie's favor is the fact that whenever Jack Crow talks, James Woods' character, I just hear Hades from Hercules, which really undercuts his cool heterosexual guy credentials. And he also gets tied up at some point by the main vampire, and he's like getting a ball in his face, and he's just like, "Oh, you hate me, don't you?" And fellas, anyway, if I'm being honest, though, as somebody who has hung out with straight men for extended periods of time, I think they're all kind of just like this. Alright. 3 out of 10. I think that's a little high for this movie, but as stated, I'm not into action movies, and this is a good example of an action movie I'm not into, but it is not obscenely awful. However, I did have to skip over some of the scenes with female characters being treated like shit, because oh boy, it gets bad. It's intense in some moments, so keep that in mind if you want to go watch that. Moving on. The Vampire Lovers. This is an adaptation of Carmilla, so it gets an instant 10 out of 10. They do not hold back. There's actual gay sex in this, which, neat. Peter Cushing's also in this movie. I'm assuming it was because of studio things, but it's just really funny to see him just, like, show up. If I'm being completely honest, this movie is absolute garbage, but if you're a boob enjoyer, you'll have a great time, I think. Next, Dracula 2020. Specifically, the ballet as performed by the Polish National Opera. I don't know when the ballet itself was written. I don't know how ballets work. I'm just going with 2022 as the year for this. Dear Lord, this is horny. I don't know if I was just, like, misunderstanding what was going on my screen, but if I wasn't mistaken, it really looks like they gave Dracula 3 weed-smoking husbands in addition to his 3 weed-smoking girlfriends. He just wasn't bisexual enough already. I think it was just because of, like, how ballet works, that they needed, like, dance partners for the wives. But the implications. Every single time Jonathan and Dracula's tango trends on social media, my DMs are never safe. I just get flooded with this video being sent to me from people. So this gets a 10 out of 10. Last bloodline. This was made for me, specifically. I don't know if it's ended yet, so I haven't kept up with this in a while. But for a while, the only reason I still had Webtoon on my phone was so that I could read this. I would not say it's as gay as the others, at least when I left off, but it was heavily implied that Imogen, the cat lady right here, has a crush on Mallory, and I'm counting that. So, 10 out of 10. I'm so normal about this. Did you know that I like it when things bring in, like, niche or otherwise underused vampire lore? Did you know that? Alright, next, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie. Bet you didn't know about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. Unless you did. In which case, shut up. This is not as gay as the show. I am noticing a trend there. Anyway, Paul Rubens, my beloved. R.I.P. King. I hope you got to ride around on the floor making various dead people noises before you finally kicked the bucket. I didn't get to add this to the slide because this was like last week that the news came out, but there was a documentary released posthumously where Paul Rubens came out as gay. So, also David Arquette, at least in this movie. It's important for me that you know that I raised this movie's score purely because of his character when I rewatched it. So 7 out of 10. A lot of people say that this movie is bad, because it is, but I like it. It fills me with joy. I mean, my taste is garbage, but anyway, moving on. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the show. Every superhero identity, like superhero with a secret identity story, is a little bit queer. Buffy literally gets kicked out at some point for being a vampire slayer, which is unsubtle. Admittedly, I have not finished the series, but from what I have heard about it, it does get gayer and gayer. Willow being a bisexual witch is about the gayest thing I can imagine for her. So 9 out of 10. I have seen people say that season 1 is, like, you should just, like, read a summary and skip it. I didn't know that when I first watched it, and, like, it was fine, but I definitely agree that season 1 was a little bit meh, so I will summarize it for you if you just want to skip over it. I did also enjoy the comics, but I didn't read a ton of them, and I didn't care enough to make a slide for them. And this is 0 out of 10. Okay, I'm lying about this, but I don't like it. So we're gonna move on. Tanz der Vampir. I'm gonna talk about the original German musical because the English version is one of the biggest disasters in Broadway history. This already gets points for being a musical. Like, I know that there are straight theater kids. I have met them, but you know what I mean. Yeah, shout out to Krolak for showing up in, like, tight little leather pants and shouting "Gott ist tot." I didn't put as much enthusiasm behind it, unfortunately, because I don't feel like screaming at 2 a.m. But, like, that was pretty neat. Okay, editing red here. I just need to... I was looking for an image of Krolak to use for this, and, okay, so this is Krolak. His pants aren't quite as tight as I remember them being. And then this is my drag persona. I've got better images of it, I swear, but the resemblance is a little uncanny. Other than that, it's mostly heterosexual antics, but, like, in a subversive way. Like, I would say it's similar to the new Nosferatu movie, where it's about heterosexual sexuality and, like, embracing it in a way that is, like, going against, like, purity culture, and I think that's cool. So I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. Even if the themes of sexuality are mostly centered on straight sexuality, I do think it's done really well, and Sarah's a really interesting character. Moving on to Dracula 2020. Alright, so when I watched episodes 1 and 2 when they came out, I was like, oh my god, finally, somebody who acknowledges how gay the original was. I hadn't watched a lot of Dracula adaptations at this point. And then, like, episode 3 made me cry real tears. Oh, Quincy, my dear boy, what did they do to you? Why would they do that to you? To quote Stephen Moffat regarding Dracula, he's bi-homicidal. It's not the same thing. He's killing them, not dating them. Bi-homicidal. Possibly the funniest addition to the English language, if it wasn't fucking infuriating. I do give the series an 8 out of 10, but that is a shameful 8 out of 10. Watch the first 2 episodes, and then just pretend that episode 3 is lost media. You'll be happier if you just don't watch the 3rd episode. Finally, last but certainly not least, we have The Vampire 1913, aka the oldest surviving vampire film. We're full nerd zone, guys. The premise is pretty short and simple, just like guy leaves his hometown and his fiancée to go to the big city where he gets seduced by a woman who's a metaphorical vampire. She's not a real vampire, but he watches a play that's about a vampire, and then he's just like, oh shit, that's just like me for real. And then goes back to his old fiancée and is happy ever after. Like most vampire media, it has very strong themes of sexuality. I could, for the sake of argument, say that Sybil is bisexual, but to be transparent, it is just because I would like her to give me a chance. I am giving this a 4 out of 10. At the time I'm recording this, there is no digital copy available because it exists at the George Eastman Museum in Rochester, but lucky for me, I live about an hour away from Rochester, so last summer I booked an appointment with them, and I said, pretty, please let me watch this, and for some reason they said yes, so I got to go see it. I asked them about, like, possibly digitizing it, and I was not the only weird little freak who is inquiring about this movie. So it is on their list of movies to digitize, and as soon as it is released to the general public, I am making every single person I know sit down and watch this. That is a threat. Editing Red again, just popping in to say that I am going to put a link to the museum in the description of the video. You should check them out because they're generally just a cool place, even if you're not a weird little vampire freak. And I cannot stress enough just how pleasant everyone working there was. They're all very nice, and you should support them. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. Or am I? I mean, you can leave if you want. But we're gonna get into honorable mentions. This is basically stuff that didn't meet my original criteria for one reason or another, or that I don't know very well enough to give them a proper rating, but I still wanted to just throw them in the mix so that people wouldn't ask me about them. So starting off, we have Dracula, A Comedy of Terrors. I got sent the same clip from like 5 different people across 3 social media platforms of James Daly as Dracula doing his little entrance, and for that I am very grateful. If you have my contact information and you see a clip out in the wild of gay vampires, and you're like, I want to send this to Red, but what if they've already seen it? Send it to me, because either I haven't seen it, and I get to see it, or I get to receive a fun little thing from my friends, and I get to know that, like, my friends are thinking about me. Anyway, this is an honorable mentions because I haven't seen the show. Please, please, please release a pro shot. I can't. It's in London right now because I didn't drive 5 hours to New York City to see it when it was on Broadway, because that would be insane. And I can't drive through the ocean, unfortunately. But please release a pro shot. I have seen enough clips of Dracula and Jonathan in this to kind of just get a vibe. So 10 out of 10. Please release a pro shot. Next, First Kill. I have not watched this. I don't know why I haven't sat down and watched it, because like vampire slayer romance, especially gay ones, I think we need more of that. But 10 out of 10. I'm gonna bite the CEO of Netflix for canceling this. Alright, moving on. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This was under the Vampires and Werewolves tag on Netflix when I was like scrolling through looking for vampire things to watch, and somehow not watching First Kill. I don't know. I was just like, okay, I'm bored. I'll check this out. That was a mistake. I would say that this is kind of a vampire show, and that starts out, like especially in part 1 with Jonathan Joestar, and then it just derails into a bunch of other shit, and it's like, okay, magic, sunshine, vampire magic, or not vampire magic, it's explicitly not vampire magic, it's magic for killing vampires with the power of sunshine breathing. And then part 3, it's kind of a vampire show again, but also there's just a lot of other stuff going on, and it just doesn't really feel like a vampire show. So into honorable mentions it goes. Does this show have cishet fans? Like, I'm sure it does, but I don't know. Fun fact, I used to not really get the concept of drag kings. Like, I understood that they existed, and like, you know, I was just like, okay, cool, neat. But I didn't really get the appeal until I watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it, like, I felt like that Danny DeVito clip where it's just like, oh my god, I get it. Now I'm the #1 drag king enjoyer. So this show gets a 10 out of 10. This is my favorite genre of media. That genre being, I have no fucking idea what's going on, but I'm into it. Anyway, Fright Night Origins. We can't get away from Fright Night. You thought I was done with Fright Night. This does not beat the current record holder for how fast does this get homoerotic, but the only reason I know that is because I held this next to Mystery of the Campagna, and I started counting words. That's not a joke, by the way, or an exaggeration for comedic purposes. This one sits around 140 words, and Mystery is closer to 90. So, 10 out of 10 in terms of the queer vibes, but in terms of the writing quality, I'm not sure if they had an editor. There's a lot of interesting ideas. There are lines that should have been removed by any editor, like, who's actually good at their job. And it makes me sad because this book had a lot of potential. Like, there's maybe 2 pages worth of content that are, like, actually really good and that compel me. But the only reason I made it through this book was because, it was a car crash that I just couldn't look away from. Anyway, moving on. Marceline. Adventure Time is in a similar position as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where it doesn't really feel like a vampire show. In fact, it is even less a vampire show than JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I included JoJo, so it feels fair to include this, at least Marceline. She's a bisexual dating Princess Bubblegum, so Yeah. 10 out of 10. I've never been able to get into Adventure Time, but I did watch a couple episodes in my grandmother's basement with my cousins, and this was one of them. And I got nightmares from it. Anyway, moving on. Transylvania 6-5000. I couldn't really decide whether this was like a vampire movie or just like a general monster movie, so I'm slapping it here. I'm probably overthinking it. It's probably not a huge deal. Like, I don't think anyone would have called me out if I added it to the main list, but like, it just feels safer in this category. I could make jokes about Jack and Gill, like, but I think that's just because it's gay in the way that all buddy comedies are gay. 4 out of 10. This movie's a roller coaster from minute one. It's got a really great theme song, though. I think we as a society went astray when we stopped writing original theme songs for movies. Although, if you want an even campier movie from the 80s that stars Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis, you should go watch Earth Girls Are Easy. Next we have The Countess from American Horror Story, a show that I have not watched and that I have no plans to watch because I just don't really feel like it, but it's Lady Gaga as a vampire. 10 out of 10. I don't really feel like elaborating, so I'm just gonna cut to the next one. Next! We're back in the Castlevania zone. So, this is Castlevania Moonlit Awakening, which is a musical that is going to be coming out later this year. I probably should wait until there's, like, actual posters for this at the very least, because this was the only image I could find from this musical, and I'm not even sure it's actually related to this musical, or if it's just from that theater troupe. However, I can't not mention that into the year of our Lord 2025, there is going to be an all-female troupe performing a Castlevania musical. 10 out of 10. Rest assured, when this comes out, I will do everything in my power to get my grubby little hands on it. But for right now, I'm just going to preemptively give this a 10 out of 10. While we're covering Castlevania, I might as well go back to its roots. Just kind of like, why are you as a man? Need I say more? 10 out of 10. Anyway, Elvira. She's not a vampire, technically. Or even not technically. She just isn't. But I love her too much to not say anything. My justification is that she's a parody of Vampira, who's also a parody of Morticia, so it is just like big titty GF telephone. 10 out of 10. The things I would let this woman do to me, not necessarily in a sex way. I just can't imagine any reason why I would say no to her. Next, that one twink from Baldur's Gate. Everything I know about this man has been against my will. That's not a complaint. Like he seems neat. I just have learned about him against my will. I tried playing the game and downloading it, but my laptop didn't have the storage space to it. But I have a better one now, so I hypothetically could play the game. I just haven't yet. 10 out of 10. I do wish him a many therapy. Next we have Lady Dimitrescu. I will not call her mommy. That is low-hanging fruit. And I'm short. I don't want to say it out loud. I said it out loud when I was recording yesterday, and I did not like that, so I'm not going to do it again. Anyway, with that out of the way, you can't tell me she's straight. I think the developers did go on record saying that she was a lesbian, but I don't know for sure, so I'm just going to say that she is. 10 out of 10. She's not technically a vampire, but she does have vampire vibes, and everyone I've seen talking about her has referred to her as a vampire. Also, she eats people. Speaking of eating people, Hannibal, I won't get into the specifics of this right now, but I do consider him to be like an archetypical vampire in the sense that he's like a Eastern European nobility, like, you know, psychosexually torturing a little twink. So, into the honorable mentions he goes. I tell people that the show is, like, subtle and that, like, the queerness is, like, entirely left as subtext. And then I actually watch the show over again, and I seem to keep doing this, don't I? Being wrong. Anyway, I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. Another thing I keep telling people is that the show is weird and unhinged, because it is. But also, it is genuinely, like, brilliant at times, and I would recommend, like, going and watching it. Anyway, Jennifer's Body. I'm including this for the same reason I added Hannibal. It is a bit more justified because of all the supernatural such shenanigans. Gay people are real. Needy, honestly, should have just supported her cannibal girlfriend in her cannibalism. But, I guess murdering her with a box cutter was the way to go there. 10 out of 10. This movie's amazing. People are just mean. Also, I couldn't justify putting it on the list, not even in the honorable mentions. But also, Lisa Frankenstein. Highly recommend. Diablo Cody. I owe you my life. I have this soundtrack on vinyl. Anyway, Morbius. Why are you, as a man, morbing all over another man? I don't know, I didn't watch this. I didn't actually watch this. I don't want to watch this. So I can't exactly rate it. Moving on. You got Dr. Acula. This isn't really queer-coded, so just 1 out of 10. But in terms of Red backstory relevance, I say that reading Dracula is why I'm like this, but this motherfucker, he laid the groundwork. I watched season 1, episode 7 of Fanboy Chum Chum when I was a small child, and then proceeded to have the worst nightmares of my fucking life. That's not a joke. Like, even as an adult pulling this up again, I was legit, like, nervous to do so. I regularly watch horror movies, by the way, and it's, like, literally fine. Anyway, moving on. My Immortal. I have no idea how to rate this. It's one of those things that's, like, simultaneously gay and homophobic, so we're just gonna go with a good old Gothic out of 10, and we're gonna move on. To Count Chocula. Count Chocula? More like Count choking on that dick.